I wasn't supposed to be on that street that day. And when I say that, I don't mean it in some poetic, I wandered where I wasn't meant to way. No, I mean it literally. I had no business being there. It wasn't my neighborhood. It wasn't my route home. And if life had been just a little more generous, I'd have taken the light 2 blocks back and missed everything. If I could rewrite that day, I'd take the long way, sit in traffic, stare at a red light for 10 minutes. Anything to stop what happened next from happening at all. But fate, if you believe in that, doesn't check in before it smacks you across the face. I'd left the office early. Just one of those days where everything felt pointless. You know, the kind, emails piling up that didn't need answering, people talking in circles about things that didn't matter. My mind wasn't in it, so I clocked out, told myself I'd get home, maybe make a coffee, sit on the porch, and let the afternoon waste away. The air outside was heavy, one of those thick summer days where it feels like you're breathing through a wet towel, the kind that makes your shirt cling to your back and your mood hang a little shorter than it should. I wanted to avoid the main road, too many lights, too many people, so I took a side street I'd never driven before. And that's when I saw it. At first, it was just a flash of blue through the glare of the sun. My brain barely registered it, but then I knew. It was her car, not just any blue sedan, her blue sedan. I know that car the way you know your own reflection. Same curve of the trunk, same faint patch of sun fade near the taillight from where she always parked at work. Same little dent on the back bumper from when she swore she barely tapped that pole at the grocery store. I'd teased her about that dent for weeks. But that day, I wasn't laughing. I slowed down without even realizing it, my foot easing off the gas like I was trying to sneak past. My first thought was that it had to be a coincidence. Plenty of blue sedans out there. But my gut was already twisting into knots because deep down, I knew better. So I pulled over, not right in front, half a block away, behind a row of hedges. From there, I could still see the car's outline through the gap. I cut the engine, and the sudden silence felt loud. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel staring at nothing, and then I heard it. A laugh. Not just any laugh. Hers. Warm, familiar, the kind of laugh that made our living room feel alive on winter evenings when we'd curl up with a movie. I'd heard that laugh over morning coffee, over burned toast, over road trips where we sang along to bad 80s songs. That laugh was home. But right then, that laugh was foreign. Because it wasn't alone. Mixed in with it was another laugh, lower, smoother. My son-in-law's. You ever have one of those moments where your brain just refuses to fit the pieces together? You see it, you hear it, but some instinct is screaming not to let it make sense? That was me, sitting in my car, staring at the crack in a stranger's gate, listening to the woman I'd shared a bed with for 3 decades laugh with the man who married my daughter. The gate was wrought iron, old, with a hinge that didn't quite close, just enough space for voices to spill through. I could see shadows moving on the other side, hers, his bending and shifting in the afternoon light. I told myself to get out of the car, walk up there, open that gate, but I didn't, because if I did, then whatever was behind it would stop being a question and start being an answer, and answers are final. That's when a neighbor walked by. Old guy, baseball cap, walking a little white dog that looked like it could barely keep up. He slowed when he saw me, gave me one of those curious half smiles people give strangers. His eyes flicked toward the gate, then back to me. "They've been here together a lot lately," he said, low, almost like he didn't mean to say it out loud. Then he kept walking, leaving those words hanging in the air like a trap I'd just stepped into. A lot lately. 2 words, heavy as a hammer. I felt my pulse in my ears, my jaw clenched, and suddenly it wasn't just the heat outside making me sweat. I got out of the car and started walking toward the gate, slow. My shoes felt too loud against the pavement. The laughter had stopped now. Up close, I could see the car more clearly. Same crack in the taillight cover, same faded sticker in the corner of the rear window from that charity run she did 5 years ago. No doubt, it was hers. I ran through every possible innocent explanation I could think of. Maybe she was dropping off something for him. Maybe they were planning a surprise for my daughter. Maybe this was all just one big, strange coincidence. But the word maybe is a dangerous thing, because once it shows up, it's never alone. It multiplies, and each maybe starts sounding less like hope and more like a lie you tell yourself so you can breathe for 1 more minute. I stopped just short of the gate. I could smell cut grass and something faintly sweet. Maybe her perfume, maybe my imagination. My hands were shaking, and I shoved them into my pockets so no one would see. And here's the thing. Once you start wondering if the person you love has a whole other life you know nothing about, you can't go back. You can pretend, you can ignore it, you can tell yourself it's nothing, but you can't unknow that feeling. That was the exact moment I knew my life was about to split into 2 parts. Before that street, and after. It's funny, the way a sound can reach into your chest and twist something you thought was solid. When I first heard it, I didn't even register it as suspicious. It was just her, that warm, honeyed laugh I'd heard so many times over the years. The kind that curled at the edges, starting soft before spilling over into something almost musical. That laugh has filled so many spaces in my life. It's been the background noise to mornings when the sunlight came in at the perfect angle. It's been my anchor after long days, drifting through the hallway before I even stepped inside. Hell, it was one of the first things I fell in love with about her, that sound that made the world seem lighter. But on that street, in front of that gate, it didn't sound like home. It sounded out of place, like hearing a familiar song in a foreign language. And then layered beneath it came another voice, deeper, smoother, the kind of voice that, under normal circumstances, I'd recognize instantly, because I'd heard it around my dinner table, at family barbecues, standing at the altar when he married my daughter, my son-in-law. I froze, caught between moving forward and staying put. My body felt like it was split in two. My legs wanted to inch toward that sound, but my chest wanted to cave in. And here's the thing, when two voices you know overlap like that, you can't help but start imagining their faces, the way they're looking at each other, the small shared smiles between words. And that's where my mind went, uninvited. I could see them in my head, standing close, leaning in, too close. I hated myself for thinking it, but I hated the fact that it might be true even more. The gate in front of me was old wrought iron, painted black once, though most of the paint had chipped away, leaving patches of rust. It didn't close all the way. Maybe the hinge was warped. Maybe it had been like that for years. All I knew was that there was just enough space for voices to slip out into the afternoon air, and I could hear them now. Not words, not yet, just the rise and fall of tones, the easy rhythm of people who were comfortable with each other, comfortable in a way that set my teeth on edge. My breath came shallow. It wasn't that I couldn't breathe, it was that I didn't want to. Breathing meant existing in this moment, and part of me just wanted to freeze it until I could figure out how to unhear what I'd already heard. That's when I noticed the neighbor. Old guy, baseball cap pulled low, a little white dog trotting beside him like it was on autopilot. He glanced at me quick, assessing, then at the gate. His gaze lingered there for a second too long before flicking back to me. "They've been here together a lot lately," he said, almost under his breath, like it wasn't meant for me, but it was. And then he kept walking. No pause, no look back. Just dropped the sentence like a stone in water and moved on, leaving the ripples for me to deal with. "A lot lately." The words lodged themselves in my skull, repeating. They didn't fit with the image I had of her, or of him. But they didn't need to fit, they just needed to exist. And now they did. I stood there for a few seconds, still hidden from full view, and I started bargaining with myself. You know the way people do when they're not ready to face the truth? I told myself, maybe she'd stop by to bring him something. Maybe they were working on something for my daughter. Maybe. But every maybe I came up with was weaker than the last. And here's what I realized later. Those maybes weren't real possibilities. They were lifelines I was throwing myself just to keep from drowning in what I was starting to suspect. The laughter had stopped now. Silence is a dangerous thing when you're listening for proof. It's like the moment before a storm breaks still, heavy, loaded with things unsaid. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears it almost drowned out the faint sound of her voice. It was lower now, softer, like she was leaning in. I moved closer, not enough to see, but enough to catch the occasional word. Something about timing, something about keeping it quiet. And then his voice again, with this almost amused tone, like the two of them were in on some secret the rest of the world didn't get to know. I felt my stomach tighten. You ever notice how, when you're on the edge of finding out something terrible, your mind races through every version of events except the real one? It's like your brain is willing to invent a dozen scenarios, all of them wrong, just to avoid stumbling into the one that's right. That's what I was doing, playing mental hopscotch between explanations. But I couldn't shake the way her voice sounded. I'd heard her talk to friends, co-workers, neighbors. I'd heard her voice change when she was tired, excited, angry. But I'd never heard it with that tone before, that mix of softness and, I don't know, a kind of sparkle. And the truth is, you can't fake that. Not to someone who's been listening to you for 30 years. My feet were moving before I'd even decided to move them. Halfway up the sidewalk now, my shadow stretched across the cracked concrete, creeping toward the gate like it was trying to get there before I did. And then I stopped, because in that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted to see what was on the other side. Hearing it was bad enough. Seeing it, that would make it permanent, concrete. It's like when you suspect there's something awful written in a letter. You can feel it in the weight of the paper, but once you open it, you can't pretend it says anything else. I stood there, frozen, and the air around me felt too hot, too heavy. My palms were damp, my throat was dry. And then I heard the sound of movement on the other side of the gate. Footsteps, faint, getting closer. I took a step back without thinking. I was seconds away from walking away entirely when the door inside the gate creaked open. Her voice again, louder now, saying something I couldn't quite catch, and then his, answering, both of them laughing, but quieter this time. There was something about that quiet that unnerved me more than the original laughter had. Loud laughter can be explained away, a joke, a funny story, a coincidence, but quiet laughter, that's for moments moments you want to keep to yourself. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I was caught between this primal need to walk through that gate and a bone-deep dread of what I might find. And somewhere in the middle of that, I realized this wasn't just about that day. This was about every day before it. Every memory we'd built, every moment we'd shared, was suddenly under review. Because if there was something happening here, whatever it was, then it meant there was a whole part of her life I didn't know about. And once that thought landed, it was like a crack in glass, small at first, but spreading fast. I stepped closer to the gate, close enough to see my reflection in the sliver of black paint that was still clinging to the metal. My own face looked strange to me, like I was looking at someone I'd only just met. And I thought, if I open this gate, everything changes. But if I don't, then maybe it already has. I don't even remember deciding to push the latch. One second my hand was resting there, cold metal under my fingers, and the next I was hearing that tiny metallic click as it gave way. The sound felt deafening. It was such a small, simple noise, but in that moment it felt like a starter pistol. Like once it happened, there was no stopping what came next. The gate creaked open just enough for me to slip through. The first thing that hit me wasn't what I saw, it was the air. Inside the gate, it felt heavier somehow, warmer, like walking into a room where the windows had been shut too long. I could smell faint perfume, hers mingled with something sharper. Whiskey, maybe. Or bourbon. The garden was small, overgrown in places. The grass hadn't been cut in a while. A couple of empty glasses sat on the patio table, along with a bottle that still had a finger of amber liquid at the bottom. I scanned the space. At first I didn't see them. My heart was hammering so hard I half expected to find them tangled together in plain sight. But the chairs were empty. The back door of the house was shut, curtain drawn across the glass. I stepped further in, the gravel crunching under my shoes. Each step felt loud, invasive, like I was trespassing, which technically I was. Then I heard it, her voice, muffled now, coming from inside the house. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone, soft, deliberate, like she was explaining something, or confessing. Then his voice, lower, cutting in quickly. My stomach tightened. The sound of them together was like static in my head. Each word another piece of interference I couldn't tune out. I moved closer to the door, pressing myself against the wall beside it. From here, I could hear them better, but the words were still disjointed. Something about waiting, something about not yet. Then silence again, and in that silence, my imagination filled in the blanks. I pictured them standing close, faces inches apart, eyes locked in that charged way people look at each other when they're about to cross a line. I had to see. The curtain over the glass door was thin, just enough to blur shapes but not block light completely. I inched toward it, careful not to make a sound. Through the pale fabric, I could see movement. Two shadows, one taller, one shorter. They were facing each other, close. My throat felt dry. My hand, almost without thinking, went to the door handle. It wasn't locked. I pushed it open just a crack. The smell hit me first, the same floral note of her perfume. Stronger now, mixed with the scent of his cologne. That combination made my chest ache. Two worlds that were never supposed to overlap, colliding in one breath. The voices stopped. I froze in the doorway. They'd heard me. Her face appeared first, turning toward me. Surprise flickered across it, surprise. And something else. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. He turned next. His expression was harder to read. He didn't look startled. He looked ready. For a few seconds, no one spoke. My eyes darted between them. Her hair was slightly messy, like she'd run her hands through it. He was holding a glass in one hand, but his grip was tense. Finally, I found my voice. It didn't sound like me. What's going on? Her lips parted like she was about to answer, but she didn't. She looked at him first, and that small, instinctive glance hit me like a gut punch, because it told me who she was aligned with in this moment, not me. I stepped inside fully now, closing the door behind me. The room felt smaller with all three of us in it, the air thick enough to chew. "I think," he said finally, his tone maddeningly calm, "you should sit down." The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. Sit down? In this moment? As if I were a guest in some normal conversation? "I'm not sitting down," I said. "Someone needs to tell me why my wife's car is parked outside my son-in-law's house, and why the two of you are in here, together." Her eyes dropped to the floor. His stayed on me. Then he spoke again. "It's not what you think." I almost walked out right then, because isn't that always the first line? But something in his tone, not defensive, not pleading, made me stop. "Then what is it?" I asked. She finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost shaking. "We didn't plan for you to find out like this." Those words, not what I was finding out, not denying there was something to find out, just that they hadn't planned for me to know. The floor seemed to tilt slightly under me. I glanced around the room now, looking for clues, for something that would make sense of this. On the table was a folder, a thick, worn folder, stuffed with papers. Before either of them could stop me, I reached for it. He stepped forward, but I was faster. I pulled the folder open. Inside were photographs, not romantic ones, at least not in the usual sense. They were surveillance photos. People I didn't recognize. Streets I didn't recognize. Notes scrawled in her handwriting. "What the hell is this?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "Yet?" I repeated. Then she looked me in the eyes for the first time since I'd walked in, and what I saw there wasn't guilt, it was fear. He spoke next, his voice low. "We've been working on something. Something dangerous." Dangerous. The word didn't fit with the scene I'd built in my head. I'd been expecting betrayal, affairs, lies. Not this. "What does any of this have to do with the two of you being here alone?" I asked. Her hands were shaking now, because if anyone knew, it would put you in danger too. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "You're telling me you've been sneaking around with my son-in-law because you're, what? Secret agents?" The corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile, but close. "Not exactly. But we can explain. Just not here." Something in his tone and in the weight of the photos in my hands told me this wasn't a joke. And just like that, the certainty I'd had outside the gate, the absolute belief I knew what was going on, cracked. But in the crack, something darker crept in. Because if they weren't having an affair, then whatever they were doing might be even worse. I stood there holding that folder like it was a live grenade. The edges of the paper dug into my palm, but I didn't loosen my grip. "You're going to have to explain," I said, my voice lower now, tighter. My wife exchanged a glance with him, and I noticed this wasn't a quick, guilty glance anymore. It was a calculated one, like they were deciding how much to tell me. That pissed me off more than anything. The fact that they had to decide what truth I was allowed to hear. I set the folder down on the table. "Start talking." He was the first to speak. "The people in those photographs, they're not strangers to us. They're connected to someone we've both been watching for a long time." I let out a short, humorless laugh. My wife and my son-in-law are suddenly a spy team? Do you hear how insane this sounds?" He didn't flinch. My wife stepped forward. "It started months ago," she said quietly. "Before you even knew there was anything wrong." I shook my head. "Anything wrong? You've been disappearing for hours, lying about where you were, and now I walk in on you here with him. I'd say something's wrong, yeah." She closed her eyes for a second, like she was bracing herself. "You're right, I lied. But it wasn't about this, not in the way you think." I gestured toward the folder. "Then tell me what I'm looking at." Her voice dropped. "Those people are dangerous. They're part of something bigger, and if they knew we were tracking them, they'd kill us." The words hung there, absurd and chilling all at once. I stared at her. "Kill you? You're a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake. What kind of life do you think we're living here?" She didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the kitchen counter and opened a drawer. When he turned back, he was holding something I hadn't expected to see in his hands, a gun. I froze. "What the hell is that for?" "Protection," he said simply. He set it on the table next to the folder, the metal catching the light. "This is insane," I said. "You expect me to believe that my wife and my son-in-law are running some kind of off-the-books surveillance operation? For what? Who's paying you?" "No one," he said. "We're not being paid. This isn't official." That word, official, made my stomach turn. If it wasn't official, then what was it? I looked back at my wife. She was watching me, but not in the way someone watches to see if you believe them. No, she was watching me to see if I'd follow, and that scared me. "Why him?" I asked finally. "Why are you working with him?" She hesitated. "Because he was the first one who saw the signs." I blinked. "Signs of what?" He answered for her. "That you were being followed." The room seemed to tilt again. "Me?" "Yes," my wife said. "It started small, someone watching our house. Cars that stayed parked down the street too long. Then I started noticing the same faces near your office. We didn't want to tell you until we knew for sure." I shook my head slowly. This is ridiculous. But my brain was already replaying moments I'd brushed off. A black sedan I'd seen in my rearview mirror more than once. A man at the gas station who seemed to take too long to choose a snack. Coincidences, I'd told myself. Now I wasn't so sure. I pointed at the folder. "So these people, they're the ones following me?" She nodded. "And what you've been what? Sneaking around together to play detective?" "Not play," he said. "We've been documenting everything. And last week, we found something." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "What did you find?" They exchanged another glance. "This one wasn't calculated, it was heavy." My wife spoke. "Your name, on a list." I felt the air leave my lungs. "A list of what?" Her answer came slowly. "Targets." The word landed like a blow. My mouth went dry. "This is insane," I said again. But it came out weaker this time. "Who are they?" He shook his head. "We don't know exactly, but they're organized. And they're close. Too close." I stared at the folder, at the photos spilling out like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. "So why not go to the police?" I asked. "Because we don't know who we can trust," she said. "And if they have people inside," she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Silence settled over us again. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It presses in on it. Then, from outside, a noise. All three of us turned toward the window. A car door. I moved toward the curtain and peeked through the narrow gap. A black SUV was parked halfway down the street. Dark windows. Engine still running. "Is that them?" I asked. He didn't look. "It's always them." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My wife grabbed the folder and shoved it into a bag. "We have to go. Now." I stepped back. "Go where?" "Somewhere they won't expect," she said. "And if I don't go?" I asked. Her eyes locked on mine. "Then you're already dead." The words hit me like ice water. She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't raising her voice. She was just telling me a fact. The SUV's engine revved. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew this was the moment. Whatever life I thought I'd been living ended the second I stepped through that gate. He was already at the door, checking the street. She was shoving more papers into the bag, and I stood there, caught between disbelief and the cold, creeping certainty that they were telling the truth. "Now or never," he said, his voice sharp. I took one last look at the folder on the table, the gun beside it, the people I thought I knew better than anyone. Then I stepped toward the door. That's when the SUV started moving. Slow at first, then faster. It stopped right in front of the house. The passenger window rolled down, and the man in the front seat smiled right at me. The man in the passenger seat was still smiling at me. Not a friendly smile, the kind you give a stranger when you're trying to unsettle them. A smile that said, "I know something you don't." He didn't break eye contact. Then, without warning, the SUV's rear door swung open. "Move," my son-in-law barked. He shoved the gun into my hand. I almost dropped it. "What the?" "Just in case," he said. My wife was already pulling me toward the back door of the house. Through the alley. I barely had time to process before we were moving. The SUV's engine roared, tires screeching as it inched forward. The back door slammed behind us and we cut through the narrow strip of yard into the alley. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest. "Where are we going?" I hissed. "Garage 2 blocks down," he said. "We have a car there." We sprinted. My shoes slapped against the wet pavement, every sound feeling magnified in the echo of the alley. Behind us, the crunch of tires on gravel the SUV was following. "They're coming," I said. "I know," he replied, not even looking back. We reached a cross street. He held up a hand, and we stopped just short of the curb. The SUV's headlights swept across the intersection, blinding for a second, then disappeared down the other end. "Go," he said, pushing forward again. The garage turned out to be a rusted roll-up door wedged between 2 old brick warehouses. He yanked it open just enough for us to slip inside. The smell of oil and dust hit me first. Then I saw the car, a beat-up, dark blue sedan that looked like it had been sitting there for years. "This is your escape vehicle?" I said. "Looks like nothing worth chasing," he shot back. We climbed in. My wife slid into the passenger seat, clutching the bag with the folder like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The engine coughed once, twice, then came to life. We rolled out of the garage slowly, turning the opposite way from where we'd seen the SUV. For a few precious seconds, it felt like maybe we'd lost them. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw them again. Black SUV, same dark windows, closing in. "They found us," I said. "Of course they did," he muttered. "They always do." The sedan's tires squealed as he floored it. We tore down the narrow street, past shuttered storefronts, and dimly lit apartments. The SUV stayed on us, smooth and steady, never swerving. "They're not trying to overtake us," I said. "No," he replied grimly. "They're hurting us." "Hurting us where?" "That's what I'm trying to find out." We cut left, then right, doubling back through side streets. For a moment, the SUV disappeared from the mirror, but my gut told me it wasn't gone. We burst out onto a main road, the city lights bleeding across the windshield. Traffic was light, but every car felt like it could be them. Then there it was again, not behind us this time. Ahead, another black SUV. "They've got 2, I said. "More than 2, he replied. The road narrowed, boxed in by construction barriers. I felt the walls closing in literally. "We can't outrun them," my wife said. "We have to stop." "Stop?" I turned to her. "Are you insane?" "They're not going to shoot us in the middle of the street," she said. He glanced at her. "You'd be surprised." We hit the end of the construction zone and there they were. 2 SUVs now, one in front, one behind, closing in. "Hold on," he said, yanking the wheel hard to the right. We smashed through a chain-link fence into what looked like an abandoned lot. The sedan jolted over potholes and debris, the suspension screaming in protest. The SUVs followed. "There's no way out," I said, scanning for an exit. "There's always a way out," he muttered. We skidded around the far side of the lot, straight toward what looked like a dead end, a brick wall. My stomach dropped. Then, at the last second, he jerked the wheel left, sliding through a gap between 2 buildings so narrow I swore the mirrors scraped the walls. We burst out into another alley, tires spitting gravel, and shot across a side street into darkness. For the first time since it started, I couldn't see them. No headlights, no engine growl, just our own breathing. We slowed to a crawl. "They'll find us again," he said quietly. "They always do." I turned to my wife. "Who are they?" She looked at me for a long moment. "The people who used to protect you." The words made no sense. "Used to?" Her expression didn't change. "Until you became a liability." A cold weight settled in my chest. "What are you talking about?" "That list we found," she said. "You weren't just on it, you were at the top." I stared at her. "Why?" She opened her mouth to answer, and the windshield shattered. Glass sprayed across the dashboard. Somewhere behind us, headlights blazed to life. "They found us," he said, and just like that, we were running again. The sound of our tires on wet asphalt was the only thing keeping me tethered to the moment. Every bump, every jolt, it reminded me I wasn't dreaming. But the truth was, I wished I was. The headlights behind us grew larger, brighter. Another black SUV, closing fast. "Where do we go?" I asked. "No more running," my son-in-law said. His voice was flat. Calm, the kind of calm you get right before doing something dangerous. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. He took a sharp left into a parking garage. The squeal of the tires echoed off concrete, the sound bouncing back at us like we were being chased by ourselves. We climbed to the top level, the city skyline glowing beyond the ledge. The car rolled to a stop. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "They'll follow us up here," he said, stepping out. "That's the point." "The point?" My wife didn't move. She was staring at the bag in her lap, clutching it like it was a child. "Out," he told me. I hesitated, then stepped into the cold night air. My breath rose in clouds. The SUV's engine echoed below, closer. I turned to him. "This is insane. We're trapping ourselves." "Not us," he said. "You." My stomach dropped. "What?" Before I could react, I felt something cold press against the back of my neck. I turned my head just enough to see my wife holding the gun. "Don't," she said quietly. I stared at her. "You're pointing that at me?" Her eyes glistened in the dim light, but her hand didn't shake. "I didn't want it to end this way." "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, my voice rising. The SUV pulled onto the rooftop. Two men stepped out, the same passenger from before still smiling, and another, taller one, with eyes like steel. The taller man spoke first. "You made this harder than it needed to be." I looked between them, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Who are you?" The smiling one answered. "People who clean up mistakes." My son-in-law stood between me and them, not in defense, but like he was waiting for instructions. "Somebody better start explaining." I snapped. The taller man took a step forward. "You really don't remember, do you?" "Remember what?" The smile faded from the first man's face. 6 years ago, Bucharest, Hotel Marlow, room 512. I blinked. "I've never been to," and then, like a needle sliding into my brain, something unlocked. Flashes, a room bathed in yellow light, a man on the floor, blood pooling under his head, my own hands trembling, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I staggered back. "No, that's not possible." "It's not only possible," the taller man said, "it's why you're here. Why we're here." My wife's voice was barely a whisper. "They told me you didn't remember. That's why I agreed to help bring you in." I stared at her. "Bring me in? You think I did this?" Her eyes darted away. "I've seen the file." The taller man took another step forward. "You were one of us. Until you went rogue. Until you put a bullet in a diplomat's head and disappeared." "That's insane." "It's the truth," the smiling man said. I tried to think, to breathe. My head felt like it was splitting open. Those flashes in my mind, they felt real. Too real to be planted. But why couldn't I remember anything else? The taller man glanced at my wife. "We can take him now." She nodded, but her hand on the gun didn't move. That hesitation saved me, because in that instant, a different memory hit me hard and sharp. Air voice. Not soft. Not trembling. Cold. Telling someone over the phone, he has no idea who he is. Telling them, we'll make sure he never remembers. The truth slammed into me so hard I almost laughed. They weren't here to arrest me. They were here to erase me. And my wife, she wasn't protecting me from them. She was working for them. The taller man reached into his coat. I moved without thinking. My elbow caught my wife's wrist, sending the gun skidding across the pavement. I grabbed it before it stopped rolling. The smiling man stepped forward, but I aimed at his chest. "Don't," I said. He smiled again. "There he is. The man from room 512. I didn't know if he was right, but for the first time I wasn't sure he was wrong. The taller man's hand tightened in his coat. I backed toward the edge of the rooftop, the gun steady in my grip. "If you're telling the truth, then you know I won't hesitate." The smile disappeared. "You won't get far," the taller man said. "Maybe not," I replied, "but I'll take one of you with me." Behind me, the city stretched out, glowing and endless, and somewhere deep inside, past the fear and confusion, something else stirred. Not the man I thought I was. The man they said I used to be. The wind on the rooftop was sharp, cutting through my shirt as I stood there with the gun. 3 sets of eyes were locked on me, my wife's, the smiling man's, and the taller one's. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the taller one shifted his weight. That tiny movement was enough to trigger something in me. It wasn't thought. It was muscle memory. I dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired. The shot cracked across the rooftop like a whip. The bullet caught the taller man in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The smiling man moved faster than I expected, but I was already on my feet. I shoved my wife toward the car and fired again, this time at the concrete near his feet. Chips of pavement exploded upward, forcing him to dive for cover. The SUV's engine roared to life. Not ours, theirs. No time to think. I jumped into the driver's seat of the sedan, the gun still warm in my hand. My wife scrambled into the passenger seat, clutching the dashboard like it might save her. "Drive," she shouted. "You don't get to give me orders anymore," I snapped, slamming the gear shift into reverse. The tires screeched against the concrete as we shot backward, spun, and tore down the ramp. The SUVs moved to block us, one at the base of the ramp, the other on the street below. I didn't slow down. We hit the first SUV head-on, the metal crunching, airbags deploying on their side. I yanked the wheel left, scraping past their fender and spilling out into the street. The second SUV gave chase instantly. "Where are you going?" my wife demanded. "Somewhere they can't follow," I said, though in truth, I had no idea where that was. The city blurred past, neon lights smearing into streaks in the wet night air. My hands gripped the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. But beneath that panic, something else was building. Control. I knew how to lose a tail. I didn't remember learning it, but my body did. I cut through a service road behind a line of warehouses, weaving through tight turns that made the SUV hesitate. Then I killed the headlights and slid into a loading dock just as they roared past. We sat in silence, the engine idling. My wife's breathing was ragged. "You're going to get us both killed." I looked at her. "You've been lying to me since the start. Why shouldn't I think you're trying to get me killed?" I sickly. She didn't answer. A noise outside, faint footsteps on gravel. I killed the engine, held my breath. The footsteps stopped right outside the dock. Without thinking, I slid out of the car, gun in hand. My feet moved silently on the concrete, my grip steady. The angle of approach, the way I kept my profile against the wall, it all felt familiar. I peered around the corner. Not the smiling man. Not the taller one. A third. Younger. Nervous. He had a radio in his hand. I closed the distance before he could react, one hand on the back of his neck, the other pressing the barrel to his ribs. "Drop it," I said. He froze. The radio slipped from his fingers. "Who sent you?" He hesitated. That was a mistake. I twisted his wrist until he hissed in pain. "Who? They all work for him," he stammered. "The smiling one. He's not here to kill you, he's here to deliver you." "To who?" The kid swallowed hard. "The one you tried to kill in Bucharest." The words hit me like ice water. "Alive?" I whispered. He nodded quickly. "Very. And he wants you to see what you started." I let go of him and stepped back, my mind spinning. If the man in Bucharest was alive, then everything I'd been told, everything I'd half remembered, wasn't the whole truth. Which meant I'd been running from a ghost story. And now the ghost wanted to meet me. The kid bolted the second I loosened my grip, disappearing into the dark. I didn't stop him. I went back to the car. My wife stared at me, pale and wide-eyed. "What happened?" she asked. I started the engine. "We're not running anymore." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done hiding," I said, pulling out of the dock. "If they want me alive, then we use that." Her voice was almost a whisper. "Use it for what?" I met her eyes for a fraction of a second. "To find out who I was. And maybe, to finish what I started." I don't know if it was courage or stupidity that made me stop running. Maybe both. The rain had slowed to a mist by the time we pulled up outside the old train station. It was one of those places you drive past 100 times and never look at boarded windows, graffiti, a roof that looked like it could cave in if you sneezed at it. Perfect place for a meeting with someone who might want me dead. My wife sat stiff in the passenger seat, clutching her coat like the cold was crawling under her skin. She hadn't said much since the warehouse. I hadn't pressed her. "You sure about this?" she finally asked. "No," I said and stepped out of the car. Inside, the station smelled like rust and old rain. The air had that stillness that makes your neck itch, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. He was there, waiting. I recognized him the moment I saw him. I didn't remember his name. I didn't even remember what exactly I'd done to him, but the way my chest tightened told me everything. Tall, sharp suit, skin pale against the black of his clothes, and those eyes cold, heavy, like he was measuring me for a coffin. "Been a long time," he said. His voice was deep, but quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you lean in whether you want to or not. I stood still. "They told me you were dead." "They tell people a lot of things," he said. "Helps keep the world clean." My wife walked in behind me, her heels clicking on the cracked tile. He smiled at her, not warmly, but like someone greeting a reliable employee. "You did well," he told her. I turned to look at her. "You brought me here for him?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "You want to know who you were?" the man said, stepping closer. "I can tell you. I can tell you what you did in Bucharest. I can tell you why you vanished. But what? But the truth costs something, and the price isn't money." His eyes didn't leave mine. "It's loyalty." The word felt like a hook dragging across my ribs. "You want me to work for you?" I said. He tilted his head. "Not want. Need. You were good at what you did. The best. And men like you, they don't get to retire. They just take long vacations." was not. I'm not the man I was, I said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That's what you think. But tell me, who lost that tail tonight? Who pulled a gun without hesitation? Who walked into this station, knowing it could be a trap? I didn't have an answer. You see? He said softly. The man you were is still in there. You've just forgotten how to hear him. The worst part? I think I believed him. So what's the job? I asked before I could stop myself. He glanced at my wife. We'll discuss that later. First, a gesture of good faith. He pulled something from his coat, a small battered envelope. I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, in a hotel room, the same yellow light from my flashes of memory. And there, on the floor beside me, was the man I remembered, blood around his head, eyes closed. Only in the photo I wasn't holding a gun. I was holding a phone, and I was smiling. That was taken 10 seconds before you disappeared, he said. The photo felt like it was burning in my hand. So, I didn't kill him? He leaned in close enough that I could smell the faint trace of his cologne. Oh, you did, he whispered. You just don't remember why. Before I could respond, the sharp crack of a gunshot split the air. My wife gasped and staggered backward, clutching her side. Blood spilled between her fingers. The man didn't flinch. I spun around, gun in hand, but the shooter was already gone. The sound of footsteps fading into the dark. I turned back to the man. Was that part of your plan? His expression didn't change. Consider it a reminder. Everyone around you is a liability, except me. He started walking toward the exit. You have 2 days to decide. Come back to me, or I send the rest of the photos to people who will make sure your next vacation is permanent. And then he was gone. I knelt beside my wife. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold. She looked at me through the haze of pain and whispered something. I had to lean closer to hear it. You weren't supposed to, remember? Her eyes fluttered shut, and just like that, I was alone.
The sound of sirens is strange. You don't just hear them, you feel them. They worm into your chest, thrum through your bones, make your hands twitch even if you're standing still. And I wasn't standing still. I was kneeling on the cracked tile of that train station, my wife bleeding out in my arms, my ears ringing from the gunshot. The sirens were still far away, but they were coming fast. Stay with me, I told her. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Blood was pooling beneath her, warm, sticky, and somehow already cold at the same time. My shirt was soaked in it. I pressed my hand harder against the wound, but every time I pushed, she groaned. And that sound made something in me twist. The front doors slammed open. 2 paramedics rushed in, their boots echoing on the tile. Behind them, I saw the first flash of red and blue outside, the shadows of uniforms moving in. Step back, sir, one of the medics barked. I didn't move. Sir, now. I forced myself to let go and back away, my hands slick with her blood. They started working on her immediately, gauze, scissors, a rush of medical jargon I couldn't keep up with. I stood there, frozen, watching the life drain out of someone I'd spent 3 decades with. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. The grip was firm, too firm. I turned, and a uniformed officer was standing there. Sir, you need to come with me. What? Why? Now. They didn't cuff me, but the way they guided me toward the exit made it clear I wasn't going anywhere by choice. Outside, the night was chaos. 2 police cruisers, an ambulance, and a small crowd of onlookers drawn by the flashing lights. The air was heavy with that metallic smell of rain on pavement, mixed with exhaust fumes and something else, something sharper. The officer led me to a car and leaned in close. You're going to sit here until Detective Mallory talks to you. Understand? I nodded. They left me there, the car door open, the sirens still wailing around me. That's when I saw him. Across the street, half hidden in the shadows, the man from the station, my wife's handler, boss, executioner. He was leaning against a lamppost, watching everything like it was a movie he'd already seen. Our eyes met, and he smiled. No one else seemed to notice him. Before I could move, Detective Mallory appeared. He was mid-40s, heavy-set, with the kind of face that looked permanently unimpressed. Quite a night, he said, sliding into the car beside me. Someone shot my wife, I said. That's what it looks like, he said, flipping open a notebook. Thing is, we've got witnesses saying you were the one holding the gun. That's insane. The shooter was gone before He held up a hand. Not saying I believe it, but it's interesting, don't you think? The first guy on the scene is an ex-something. Nobody can tell me exactly what you used to do, and the victim just happens to be your wife, who, by the way, was being looked into for some very dirty business. I stayed quiet. Mallory leaned closer. Here's the problem, friend. People who don't want to talk, they usually have a reason, and I'm guessing yours is a good one. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement across the street, but the lamppost was empty now. The man was gone. Detective, a voice called from outside. Mallory sighed and stepped out of the car. Don't go anywhere. I didn't plan to. But then the back door of the car opened from the other side. It wasn't Mallory. It was the kid from the warehouse, the one with the radio. "You need to leave. Now," he whispered. "Why?" I asked. "They're going to take you in. Mallory's already decided you're guilty of something, even if it's not tonight's shooting. And if they get you into a cell," he trailed off. "What?" "They won't let you out alive." He glanced over his shoulder. "I can get you to him, the man from the station, but you have to decide now." Every rational part of me screamed to stay put, to let the law handle this, to fight it the clean way, but rational had left me hours ago. I slid out of the car. We moved fast, ducking between cruisers, cutting through the alley behind the station, my shoes splashing through shallow puddles. I could still hear the chaos behind us, but it was fading. The kid didn't speak until we were a block away. "You think you're the one asking the questions?" he said, breathing hard. "But you're not. Not yet. Right now, you're still in the game, and you don't even know the rules." We turned a corner, and there he was. The man, standing under a flickering streetlight, hands in his pockets like he'd been waiting all night. "You made the right choice," he said. "Really? Because my wife's bleeding out in some ambulance, and now I'm apparently a fugitive." "She was never yours to lose," he said. "And you were never meant to be here this long." The words hit me wrong, like they were heavier than they should be. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "It means the man you think you are, the husband, the citizen, the man who believes in laws and fairness. That man was a placeholder. The real you, the one who walked away from Bucharest and made half of Eastern Europe nervous for a decade, that man is still here." "I don't believe you," I said. He smiled, and it was cold enough to cut. "You will, because starting tonight, you don't have a choice." Before I could answer, headlights swept over us, another unmarked car pulling into the street. The kid backed away, nervous. The man didn't move. "Time to go," he said. "They're here for you." And just like that, the rules of the night shifted again.
The street was empty except for the three of us, me, the kid, and the man who'd been pulling my strings since the moment I saw my wife's car outside my son-in-law's home. Headlights cut across the cracked asphalt, and a black sedan rolled to a stop. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil. The man looked at me like we'd already had this conversation, and I'd already agreed to what was coming. "Get in," he said. I didn't move. "I'm done letting other people drive," I said. His smirk barely twitched, but I saw something shift in his eyes, the slightest flicker of interest. "You're not done," he said. "You're just finally starting to remember." The rear door opened. Two men stepped out, big, quiet, efficient, the kind of men you don't bother running from. The kid shifted nervously beside me. "If you're going to do something," he whispered, "it has to be now." And that's when I felt it, the weight in my coat pocket. The gun. Not the one from the station, but one I'd carried before, back when my life was nothing but long shadows and fast exits. I didn't even remember putting it there. The man took a step closer, voice low. "Your wife knew. She tried to keep you out, but she was too late. You can't walk away from this, Victor. You've got debts you don't even remember owing." I looked at him, then at the kid, then back at the man. My pulse slowed. My breathing evened out, and for the first time all night, I felt like I was back in control. "You're wrong," I said. Before he could respond, I drew the gun and fired not at him, but at the black sedan's front tire. The blast shattered the quiet. The car lurched, and the two heavies instinctively ducked. In that half-second of chaos, I grabbed the kid and ran. Not down the street, but into the alley, the one place they wouldn't expect, because it was a dead end. Except it wasn't, not for me. I knew the loose panel in the fence at the far end, the hidden cut-through to the service road. We sprinted, boots splashing through puddles, shouts echoing behind us. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but we didn't stop until the sirens were behind us again. We stumbled into the service road. The kid bent over, hands on his knees, gasping. "Where now?" I looked east, toward the glow of the city, then west, toward the black nothing of the hills. "They think they know my story," I said. "Time to prove them wrong." The kid stared at me. "You're going after him, aren't you?" I checked the gun, the magazine cold and heavy in my hand. "No," I said. "I'm going after all of them." The kid swallowed hard but nodded. "Then I'm with you." The night stretched out before us, wet, dark, dangerous. Somewhere out there was the man who'd turned my life into a cage. The man who thought I was still the one being hunted. But I wasn't prey anymore. I was the storm coming for him. And when I hit, there'd be nothing left to bury.